Carlsbad police arrested a 17-year-old girl this morning who they say hit and killed a skateboarder and then drove away. The crash happened just before 11 o'clock last night near Palomar Airport Road and Carlsbad Boulevard. The young man who died was 20-year-old Vinny Zelafro, who was skateboarding with a friend. The friend took down the driver's license plate, which then helped police find her earlier today. The driver, whose identity has not been released because she's a minor, is in juvenile detention tonight, now facing several charges, including felony hit and run and vehicular manslaughter. 6 people now have been hit and killed in our area in hit and run crashes in just the first 7 weeks of this year. And here to talk about the laws to crack down on hit and run drivers and the loopholes, legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Vikas Bajaj. Vic, what do you think is to blame for so many hit and runs in our area so far this year? Do you have any insight as to what's going on at this point?
You know, to really have insight on something like that, Andrew, you'd really have to be in the household of these themselves involved in these types of contacts. I can't say there's any pattern. I can't say there's any rhyme or reason to it. It just seems to be something that I believe will be temporary as far as San Diego experiencing this horrible tragedy. In
your experience, what is the reason people often leave the scene of an accident, in this case, certainly one that has somebody that's been injured or hurt or killed?
Well, to answer that question, I think we should concentrate on specifically this instance that we're speaking of. I think the younger, in my case, the criminal defendant coming into my office for consultation, or the younger the suspect is, the more likely they are to flee, and that's really just out of a gut instinct of fear. I think the older an individual gets, the more they have an understanding of staying by, no matter what the consequences are, to deal with law enforcement seems to be the better idea. So it really spans, it's more specific regarding the age of the individual who may be the suspect.
Vic, are there loopholes when it comes to hit and run cases?
I wouldn't qualify it as loopholes. I remember representing an individual in 2005 on a hit and run that occurred on North Torrey Pines Road. That's a case that I believe I was mentioning to you a minute ago, Andrew, where we actually conducted reconstructions of the incident. In that case, the prosecutor may have called it a loophole when we were able to prove that my client was not the cause of the death. But I wouldn't call it a loophole. I think in these cases, experienced defense counsel is well advised to concentrate not on the alcohol that may have been in the person's system, not on the death itself and the emotions that that may bring about, but really on the causation. Because no matter how intoxicated an individual is, there has to be some proof of causation of the fatality for there to be criminal liability in a case like this.
When it comes to simply hitting and then leaving the scene, can you talk about the difference in the charges people face if they stay at the scene, they talk to police and go through that process and help the victim, or if they leave and then get caught later?
Well, let's assume in the first hypothetical you've given us here tonight that the individual is not intoxicated. If the person is not intoxicated under the influence of alcohol or drugs, then that person simply has to, be an individual that's interviewed, perhaps receive a citation and be on their way. However, many times people who leave the scene of this type of an accident may feel that they are under the influence and they do not want to have that toxicological evaluation and the forensic proof that they're under the influence. Of course, as you know, and as we all know, if you're under the influence with a crime like this or something that causes an injury or a death like this, you will be put into custody and you'll have to make bail and have representation represent you in the criminal case. So it could span from just a simple citation all the way until incarceration and potentially a long prison sentence.
Well, we've only seen 2 arrests out of the 6 hit and runs so far this year that have resulted in death. Certainly interesting insight, Vikas Bajaj. We certainly appreciate your expertise tonight.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
All right, Kathleen.
At a zoo in Denmark, despite worldwide disgust over the last killing and feeding of a giraffe to other zoo animals in Copenhagen.
Over this region.